Welcome back to the March edition of NMRAx, where we bring you clinics and you just have to watch them and ask questions in the chat. So today we have from the Northeastern Canada Division somebody who's going to give us a talk about the Cape Breton Development Corporation Railway, but I'm not introducing him because James Watley will do a much better job of that. Will, would you like to say something?
Thanks very much, Speed. This is a clinic that we recorded a little while ago. James Watley, as you said, will do the full introduction of who I am and what I do. Um, I'm Will Lawrence. I'm a modeler in the Eastern Canada Division. I live in Maitland, Nova Scotia, and I modeled the Cape Breton and Central Nova Scotia Railway, but I also modeled the railway of the Cape Breton Development Corporation. I've been doing quite a bit of work on that in the last couple of years, and we prepared this clinic hoping to inspire others to model the smaller resource railways out there. Take
Cool.
it away, Brad.
Welcome, everyone. My name is James Watley from the Eastern Canada Division of the Northeastern Region of the National Model Railroad Association. I'm joined by fellow ECD members Greg Williams and Douglas Margison, and we're also joined by our presenter, Will Lawrence, whose talk is on modeling the Cape Breton Development Corporation Railway. I'll now introduce Will. Will Lawrence is a first-class model maker, and some of you may have seen his published articles in RMC. He's a member of the NMRA and other groups, and he has extensive knowledge of prototype railroading, especially here in the Canadian Maritime provinces. Will has delivered several presentations to NMRA and RPM gatherings and has led hands-on model-making seminars. Most recently, Will's presentation, Working with Waterslide Decals, broadcast on the October 2024 edition of NMRAx, has proven to be quite popular. Will's talk today covers an interesting regional railway that is very practical to consider as a nice prototype to model. So without further ado, please take it away, Will.
Thank you very much, James. Start screen sharing here. As James said, I'm going to talk today about the Cape Breton Development Corporation Railway. Stand by. Start my sharing first. Screen to share. All right, so today I'm going to talk about modeling the Cape Breton Development Corporation Railway. The Cape Breton Development Corporation, or Devco Railway, was an interesting resource and industrial line that operated from 1967 to 2015, surviving in a smaller, landlocked form today. Its history, eclectic collection of equipment, and short haulage make it this smaller sibling to the mining roads of the Great Lakes, Northern Ontario, and Quebec an excellent candidate for modeling. Today I'm going to talk about the background of this interesting little railway, describe some of its equipment, and discuss modeling options in HO scale. Cape Breton Island is a rugged island at the eastern tip of Nova Scotia, at the confluence of the Northumberland Strait and the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Its coal industry dates to the beginning of commercial mining in Nova Scotia, with the first recorded pits opening in 1785. Mines were largely concentrated in northeastern Cape Breton around the area of Sydney and the northwestern shore around the community of Inverness, with the mines in the northeastern area all extending well under the seabed of the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Over time, mining companies in Sydney and the environs gradually accreted into what became known as the Dominion Steel and Coal Company, or DOSCO. This included the Sydney Steelworks, whose coke ovens had become the mine's largest customer. Both these companies were owned by Hawker Siddeley Canada, and by 1961, Hawker Siddeley, who also owned the car works in Trenton-Pictou County, had estimated that the mines would be played out within 2 to 3 years of their study. Consequently, DOSCO announced that all mines were to be closed by the end of 1962. This announcement, which came without warning to provincial or local governments, sent shockwaves throughout the entire island economy and indeed through the provincial economy of Nova Scotia. Under pressure from miners and the wider community to protect the island economy, the provincial and federal governments entered negotiations with Hawker Siddeley. This resulted in the formation of 2 new government-owned crown corporations in 1967. The Cape Breton Development Corporation, also known as Devco, was under the jurisdiction of the federal government, This company took over mining operations and railway operations, spinning off the steam-powered portion of the Sydney and Louisburg Railway, which was no longer being used commercially, into a separate Crown-owned tourist railway, which is beyond the scope of this discussion. Devco's mandate was to wind down coal production in Cape Breton on a gradual basis while locating and fostering new enterprises to replace mining in the island economy. The Sydney Steel Corporation, Cisco for short, under provincial jurisdiction, took over the steel mill and coke ovens. Its mandate was to continue operations of these industries with the goal of bringing the mill to profitability. In 1973, things drastically changed. The oil crisis following the Yom Kippur War left the provincial power utility reevaluating its thermal generation portfolio, ultimately converting two of its largest and newest generating stations from bunker C oil to coal fuel. With this new demand and evaluations showing more life in the coal field than had been previously thought, Devco's mandate changed to operating the mines and opening new mines to exploit the full potential of the reserves. Suddenly, Cape Breton coal production had a new lease on life. By 1987, the Trenton and Point Tupper generating stations were both burning coal. A new mine, Prince, had been opened, and a second mine, Donkin, had broken ground. Cisco's mill was modernized in the early 1980s, converting from a coke-fired blast furnace to an electric arc furnace. This left the coke ovens with no customer, and they closed in 1990. By 2001, Cisco's mill had fallen far behind the state of the art and was permanently closed. After the equipment was dismantled and sold or scrapped, the heavily contaminated site was remediated and is now a community park and sports field complex. Meanwhile, the active mines finally played out and were closed. The new mine at Donkin had been built, but the economics of coal no longer favored opening production, and Donkin was closed without starting. Under new ownership, this mine started production in 2017, but has had several stoppages due to roof falls, and production remains very low. The assets of the Devco Railway were sold to the now privatized Nova Scotia Power Utility. The coal pier in Whitney Pier was converted from the loading of export coal to the unloading of import coal. In 2015, the Devco Railway's connection to the North American rail network was lost when Cape Breton and Central Nova Scotia Railway abandoned its trackage between Port Hawkesbury and Sydney. The current incarnation, the Sydney Coal Railway, operates today to transfer coal from the pier to the generating station at Lingan. The Devco Railway inherited a fascinating fleet of early diesels. By 1967, the Sydney and Louisburg Railway and the old Sydney Collieries Railway had accumulated one EMC Model 40, purchased from McKinnon Industries, one Alco S1, formerly from the Chicago and Northwestern Railway, 11 Alco RS1s from the Minneapolis and St. Louis Railway and the Wisconsin Central, and one General Electric 70-tonner from Pacific Great Eastern. In 1960, 3 new MLW RS-23s were added to the fleet. These were the first Devco power that had multiple unit capability. In 1975, these were joined by 2 RS-27s, which had originally been Alco demonstrators 640-2 and 640-3. In the late 1970s, the fleet began to be properly modernized with an order to GMDD in London for 13 GP38-2s, delivered between 1979 and 1983. To protect the mines in a power failure, 3 of these locomotives, 216 shown here, 217 and 218, were equipped with an auxiliary 600-volt 3-phase power connection to keep pumps functioning and prevent flooding in the event of power failure at the mines. As with locomotives, the first-day rolling stock fleet was eclectic, consisting mainly of 1,300 50-ton hoppers inherited from Dosco, Old Sydney Collieries, and the Sydney and Louisburg Railway. With the prospect of new offline customers at Trenton and Point Tupper in the 1980s, and this inherited fleet aging well past legal interchange, orders were placed for more modern cars. In 1974, orders were placed for 4,000 cubic foot 100-ton gondolas from National Steel Car in Hamilton and Hawker Siddeley in Trenton, Nova Scotia. Both groups were built to the same design, a Marine Industries Limited car, and were equipped with rotary couplers. By 1979, at least 120 of these cars were in service. At around the same time, Devco placed initial orders for 5 bay hoppers with rotary couplers, which could be unloaded at any location. These cars all employed the Ortner rapid discharge system, with car body designs differing slightly between cars built at Hawker Siddeley and built at National Steel Car. These quickly formed the bulk of the fleet with over 400 cars built, mostly the Hawker-Siddeley design shown here. All cars ordered from the 1970s onward were delivered in a variation of this green and yellow, which was also applied to Devco locomotives, the yellow indicating the end with the rotary coupler. Devco also had three groups of cabooses. A heritage fleet, we call, of ex-Canadian Pacific wooden vans, some of which later receiving plywood siding. There were several ex-Lehigh and Hudson River steel cabooses of the classic northeastern style. In 1990, Devco acquired two ex-CN Hawker-Siddeley vans. One of these cars, 9106, later went to the Ottawa Central Railway, and with the Ottawa Central's acquisition by CN recently, it has been repatched as a CN car once again. The other car remains in Cape Breton. There was little standardization of the caboose livery, with wide variation in color, numbering, lettering, and heralds. The scheme shown here is very attractive. It seems to only have been applied in this form to the two Hawker-Siddeley vans, although a variation did appear on at least one of the northeastern style cars. For service equipment, there was an interesting group. Two notable examples were the snow plows. Double-ended snow plow number 32, shown here, whose pedigree I cannot establish yet because I haven't found the information yet, and self-powered plow number 212, which was rebuilt from an RS1. This ended up being the last Devco RS1 in service since it was in special service plowing snow. Most Devco power either is or was available in HO scale plastic, with one exception. The EMC Model 40 is not the exception. It was available from model die casting just before the end of that company, and has been re-released since then by Ather. Atlas offered an excellent RS1. They've done this in the Atlas Cato line, the Atlas Red Box line, and the Atlas Classic line. The S1 has also been offered by Atlas, this version having a Rocco mechanism. They later did it as an Atlas Master model with a mechanism from China, which is also very good. It also was offered in the Lifelike Proto 2000 line. I have asked a person or two at William K. Walters whether they'll ever re-release this model. I've never gotten any kind of an indication, but it stands to reason at some point this model will show up again from Walters. The GE 70 tonner has been done by Bachmann in a couple of different versions, one with two motors, one with one. Which brings us to the exception, the RS-23. Caswell Shops does offer a resin RS-23 body shell, which is intended to go on a Lifelike SW1200 or a Bachmann S3 or S4 frame using Athern's Blomberg B trucks. The RS-27 has been offered by Proto 2000 in two versions, including the UP style, which are the former demonstrators that ended up on Devco. The two other version is a Pennsylvania Railroad version. It has some car body differences that are not suitable for the Devco engines. Probably the easiest locomotive to model in this fleet was, of course, the GP38-2. The only wrinkle there is that they have a 1,700-gallon fuel tank. As you can see in this photograph, it's quite short. GP38-2s have been done by Lifelike, Athern, Lifelike Proto, Atlas, and at least one other that I can't think of off the top of my head. Athern's Genesis model is shown here. This one is available with the correct 1,700-gallon fuel tank. Otherwise, you have to cut down the frame and reduce the size of the fuel tank. My fleet currently consists of one GP38-2, two RS1s, and one S1. Modeling the Devco RS1 fleet is pretty straightforward. The Atlas Cato RS1 and its successors are an excellent beginning. Any Atlas release will work for this. I changed out the horn for one from my spares box on a different style of mount on the front of the cab. They did this to reduce the profile going through car dumpers, I think. I rewrote a couple of handrails. As you can see here, it doesn't go to the cab wall, it goes up to the roof. I used T-sheet phosphor bronze wire for my handrails, using the Atlas stanchions and drilling them out for the wire. I also installed, you can't quite see it here, on the lower one you can see, I used phosphor bronze wire to make guides for the radiator tarps, the tarps that cover the radiator intakes, and later I added tarps made of lens wipes, is what I use, lens cleaning wipes. I also flushed up the glazing, flush with the cab walls, using 5 thou styrene. This model was painted using Vallejo paints, mixed to match the best color photographs I could find, and I had decals made by Precision Design Corporation. More on those later. The Devco RS, oh yes, did I mention I had an RS-27? I forgot the RS-27. That's funny because that's the first one I did. Modeling these, again, if you find the correct proto model, most of it's already there. If you're looking through eBay auctions and such like, because this model hasn't been made in many years, you want one either in Union Pacific, the Alco Demonstrator, Sioux Line, or Green Bay and Western. Any of those will do, or the corresponding undecorated model. They did do these in undecorated in both body styles with full parts package. That's what I started with. It was great. It's a good model. Unfortunately, it's got a lot of parts, and I do know that William K. Walters have no intention of re-releasing this model because it's very labor intensive to manufacture. For detailing, I moved the horn back to the radiator area where it is in the prototypes, and that's pretty much it. The rest of it is stock proto. Again, I use paints by Vallejo and decals from a similar set by Precision Design Corporation. I'm very happy how this turned out. These are kind of a kooky looking little locomotive. They're an interesting bridge between the RS-11 and its ilk and the following Century series. It's like the last gasp before the Century series. I think they're a nice locomotive. And the proto model is an excellent runner. The next thing we have to deal with is the hoppers. At present, I've modeled the two groups of 100-ton rapid discharge hoppers, and I've modeled one 50-ton two-bay hopper. That's because the 5 bays are way more fun to build. The 50-ton cars can be built using any number of various such models available over the years, depending on which batch of cars you want to model. Especially for those cars, your best bet, as in most modeling, is to obtain good photographs of the specific batch of cars you want to do. Both of the rapid discharge car designs can be modeled using model die casting or Athearn Genesis 5-bay Ortner hopper kits. Both of these designs require modifications to the model, although the Hawker Siddeley cars, shown on the left here, require fewer changes. For both types, the model needs to have its length and height reduced and new end platforms built. I have not yet built any of the gondolas because the modeling I'm doing does not involve where they were used. Although Marine Industries gondolas made by North American Railcar Corporation and sold by Pacific Western Railway Systems in 2013, those are an excellent beginning. They're just about the right car. The decals that I use for the Ortner cars, which I'll get into detail about, also provide the required lettering for those gondolas. Another example of the models. To model the National Steel car version of these cars, there are some major changes to begin with. First of all, you have to replace every rib on the car. The cars have a different rib spacing, so you start out by taking all the ribs off this car and reducing the car body height to 100 inches between the top cord and the bottom of the sill. And the car body is 45 feet from that end to that end. Once that's done, you remove all the factory ribs and add new ribs made out of 3x4 scale 3x4 styrene. Once that's done, I install new end and slope sheets, and slope sheets on the inside matched up to the bottom of the existing slope sheet inside the car, and a new end sheet where I cut off the end of the car. These are both made of 20 thou styrene. Inside the void that results between the new slope sheet and the new end sheet, I build up additional weight, usually using number 7 lead bird shot. I also you have to build up new platforms and railings built from styrene, wire, and photo-etched walkway material. The hopper bracing details are just strips of 4x6 styrene. If you're starting from the Athearn car, you can reinstall all of the lovely gate actuator detail. This is the model die casting car. It doesn't have it. Interior bracing in the cars is made up from 60 thousandths of an inch styrene angle. It goes inside here. It's not shown in this photograph yet. I'll show you some in a moment. The Athearn cars come with interior bracing, but it's of a different type and doesn't match the Devco cars. The main air on the National Steel car cars, there's one main air reservoir that provides brake air and dump air, and I build this up out of styrene tubing because it's much larger than the reservoir you find on the Athearn Genesis car because it's supplying both systems. The end sheet braces, as I said, are made of styrene strip, a little base of strip there. Paint and decals, again, Vallejo paints mixed up to match prototype photographs. and decals by Highball Graphics. You can see the interior bracing I've added here. This is the 60 thou styrene angle that I discussed, and I've got the first coat of yellow on these cars. These are all NSC cars. Wait, sorry, those are Hawker Siddeley cars. The bottom cars here are all NSC cars. The end bracing is the big tell between these cars. And here's what the completed cars look like. So the characteristic of these cars is their square outline, the interior bracing, and the flat end platforms. And on the NSC cars, you got these big exterior braces. These cars are a similar design to the cars that were produced for service at the Westray mine in 1991. They are not an exact match, but it's certainly an excellent beginning. To model the Hawker Siddeley cars, you start with the same cars you do for the NSC cars. Reduce the car body length to 45 feet. Reduce the car body height to 100 inches from the top chord to the bottom of the sill. New end sheets, new slope sheets, made it as 20 thou styrene. Again, additional weight added inside the void. I like my cars heavy. End platforms and railings are built up using styrene angle for the stanchions and phosphor bronze wire for the railings. Grab irons are installed on the end sheets, and I use walkway material to provide the graded walkway. The interior bracing, like I said, the Athearn bracing is incorrect, so I add the angle. In these cars, they have the NSC, the Devco car, Hawker Siddeley cars, I'm sorry, they have a split air system. So you have a small air tank on the A end of the car, which runs the dump system only, and on the B end of the car, you have a conventional air reservoir for the brake system. And for these cars, I just use the factory the factory tanks for the brake reservoir, and again, I made the secondary reservoir out of the styrene tube and styrene rod. Paint and decals are a similar story. There's some of the cars under construction again. Again, Vallejo paint and Highball Graphics set F471 will do both of these cars, and I'll show that set momentarily. To model the cabooses and the plows, I haven't tried the plow yet, but I have it on my list of things to do. For cabooses, there are several options. For the ex-CP vans, Junco did a wood kit for CP cabooses, and there are various brass models available. For the ex-Lehigh and Hudson River vans, you can use the proto center cupola caboose shown here, or the more recent Northeastern caboose done by Rapido Models, which is an outstanding model. The caboose that they have in Sydney Mines preserved is a rebuilt car, which has a different window arrangement. That would make a really interesting first kit bashing project because it's not a very different car. For the ex-CN cabooses, Van Hobbies and Overland Models have both done brass models of these cars. Generally speaking, the Van Hobbies model, while older and slightly less finely detailed, is more dimensionally accurate, and some windows are in a better place. They're placed more correctly than the Overland model. And of course, Rapido Trains recently announced that they are doing Trenton cabooses in HO scale, and one of their early release image renderings showed the Devco scheme, so we'll see what happens. And there's the Van Hobbies car painted up as a Devco car. Plow number 32 will be a straight up kit bashing or scratch building project, I think, although there is a 3D printed double-ended plow. I have not investigated in detail yet whether that would work. I think this car was built locally, so it may have to be kit bashed. And plow number 212 is a kit bash of an Atlas RS1. That's another item on my to-do list. For painting and decals for these cars, I've worked up a couple of paint mixes. I'll show them here. Don't expect you to copy them down, but if you like, you can pause the video and copy them down. These are mixes using Vallejo paints. On the left, we have the Devco Locomotive Green, the dark green that was applied to the RS1s, the RS23s, and the RS27s. And it's a mix of 4 different Vallejo colors. The later lighter green, which also is a decent match for Terra Transport's green used on their containers, is a 3-color mix I use using Vallejo, green zinc chromate, light sea blue, and pale green. I also have recently done a color close to this using Tamiya's Park Green and their white. I think I ended up with 8 parts of Park Green and 1 part white. But I haven't done a new chip of it yet. For Devco's yellow, back to the Vallejo paints, 5 parts white, 4 parts medium yellow will get you a nice match for the yellow that was used basically on everything Devco. For decals, Precision Design Corp did this decal set. I had this custom done, but I have asks. He does not have them in his regular line, but he does have the art, and you can have them custom made. He charges by the square inch of material, essentially. The upper portion of this sheet is for the Devco RS27s. The lower portion is for the RS1s and the RS23s. So you can order either or both on the same sheet, and they're lovely decals. They work very well. And each set will give you multiple locomotives. I think you can get 3 out of that, 3 out of each, I think, depending on what striping arrangements you need, because the RS1s have different striping arrangements depending on the engine. For the hopper cars, Highball Graphics set L190. This set was released last year, and it reflects the old Cape Breton Development Corporation livery, which is applied to the National Steel Car hoppers and some of the Trenton Works hoppers. There's also a variation where, in place of the full Cape Breton Development Corporation name, they experiment with putting CBDC on the sides of the car. That only lasted through, I think, 1 batch of cars, because they were not using that set of initials anywhere else. So it caused some confusion. So they went to this later livery, which just says Devco, because nobody knew what CBDC was, but everybody knew what Devco was. So that allows you to do either group. And it also will, like this version of the set, there's 1 set of each set of these decals in the set. These decals will also work for the 4,000 cubic foot gondolas. For locomotives, for the GP38-2s, Highball Graphics do set F471. This set will do the green and yellow GP38-2s, and it will do a couple of locomotives. And this set's been around for quite a long time. I'm surprised it took this long to get the hoppers. Apparently the holdup was nobody had given Jim Abbott the information. When I reached out to him to get custom decals done, he said, "Hey, I'll add them to the line if you give me the information." I said, "I'm in." So now we can get Devco hopper decals. So what comes next for that crazy guy in Maitland modeling Devco? Next steps for my modeling, I've been working mostly on equipment, but I'm starting to make plans for starting Fremo modules. Generating station, one of the candidates is the Glace Bay generating station. I think this would make a good module. You'd have to take a few liberties to make it fit into a Fremo space, but I think it would work well.